Ho, ho, hello, and welcome to SMPD Listeners, the podcast where we look back on the cartoons that shape our childhood. I am Chris Bolton. With me, as always, my Christmas companion, Mr. Mark Williams.
Hello.
Looking very festive in his elf jumper. This is probably about the one time a year you're going to see Mark look festive, so let's all celebrate it together, listeners. It is Christmas time again. We're looking back at yet another Christmas special. And this time we're busting out a 1980s classic that feels like, well, it has been around for pretty much my entire life.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it came out after I was born, but
not by much.
Not by much, and it's always been around at Christmas for me, basically. So we're looking back at Mickey's Christmas Carol.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. This has been around for fucking eons. I remember watching this when I was really small. And again, it was another one that was on TV. We taped it off the TV, and we used to bust it out every year. And then I think either when I went away to uni or when I went to when I went to Newport to the Masters, I was given a proper copy on DVD. And yeah, this comes out all the time. And then obviously with it being on Disney Plus now as well, it's one of those. It's easy enough to just whack on. Let's say Sunday we're putting up Sunday we were decorating the tree, and it was on in the background. We had that. Then we had Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas. Then we had The Grinch. And then we rounded off at Home Alone. So it was a good day of Christmas TV. But this was the very first one that went on.
Shout out to Once Upon a Christmas and to a lesser extent Twice Upon a Christmas as well, actually.
Yeah.
Both very good modern Christmas specials. Once Upon a Christmas especially. Highly recommended, both of those, listeners, if you haven't seen them. But yeah, like all of the Christmas specials we've looked back on have been around for our entire lives. Yeah. It's just that this one, I think, is one of the earliest that I remember, and so therefore has always been, like, you know, when we watched The Grinch, I said that is absolutely the one I watch every year. I don't necessarily watch Mickey's Christmas Carol every single year, but it's always around. And in fact, it was I remember, especially in the early 80s, like, this was such a huge part of Christmas. Like, it felt like, and even now, you know, Christmas decorations and things have always been a thing for the Disney company. You know, even now, if you walk into the supermarkets at the moment, both Tesco and Asda's are selling Disney Christmas decorations. I've got a tree downstairs full of them that I've gathered from the parks. You know, Christmas has always been a thing, but now these decorations all they take on kind of a bit of a life of their own. Like particularly in the Disney store this year, there's a Walt's Holiday Lodge theme to everything. You know, mine downstairs is a disparate collection of like Nightmare Before Christmas and Ratatouille and Mickey and Minnie and all sorts of things. But in the early 80s, like any time you saw Disney and Christmas, it was Mickey's Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, you know, this was what I actually thought a Christmas Carol was.
Yeah.
Like before I actually knew it was a book, before I knew it was a thing, like I thought this was a Christmas Carol. I thought it was a fucking Mickey Mouse cartoon because that's what I had seen.
Yeah, I was the same. And it's quite funny that I put it on Sunday. One, because it's Christmas, and I was going to put it on anyway. Two, because we were doing this episode tonight, and three, because the kids were going to see a version of the Christmas Carol with the school on Monday. So I thought I better prepare them for it because it depends on how they do it and how. I mean, obviously it was designed for kids, but depending on how they do it, the ghosts can be a bit scary. My kids are both fucking wimps, so I thought I better prepare them for it. But yeah, I was the same. This is what I thought a Christmas Carol was until I was really old enough to know better. And even then, you know, not so much.
Me too. I mean, for a good, you know, especially the early part of my life, this was a Christmas Carol. Then we got Scrooged in the late 80s. And I still didn't quite twig, I don't think. I was still like, oh, this is like Mickey's Christmas Carol.
Yeah, it took me a while with that one as well.
If I'm honest,
I think it was only when I saw the Muppets Christmas Carol, which I'd have been
took the words out of my mouth.
I'd have probably been about 10 or 11 at that point.
I would have been 11, so you would have been slightly younger than that. I remember seeing Muppets.
But
I
probably didn't see it when it first came out. Yeah. I think it was a couple of years later, so I'd have been about 10 or 11 as well. And it was only then I thought, hang on, it's the same story. And then it was like, right, okay.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yep, me too. That probably says a lot about our generation, maybe about us, and maybe about the area that we grew up in as well. Having said that, you know, whilst neither of us grew up in a particularly affluent area, like I was always a big reader. So you'd think that at some point a Christmas Carol would have hit my radar, but it just always seemed like it was this thing. Now, the like adaptations of Christmas Carol, you throw a fucking rock and you hit one. Like there's new ones out every year. You mentioned the kids are going to see when it's constantly being put on. You know, you see new versions touring every year. Last year they had one that you could stream. with Andrew Lincoln in. You know, there's all of these various adaptations. But I mean, for us as kids, like, look, I wasn't going to the theatre as a kid. I love to now, but fuck me, we couldn't afford to go to the fucking theatre.
Well, that was it. It was one of those rare. No, it was a very rare thing, and even if you were going, there wasn't a lot on that was for kids. You'd have a panto.
Yeah, which I hate pantos with a passion. Even did as a kid, so I wasn't one of those.
For me, but you had those, and then occasionally you get something that was put on through like a local theatre company would do it, and they give like all the local schools would get to go to like a matinee on a Wednesday or something like that.
Now we did those. I distinctly remember 2 that we went to. I was under 10, I think, watching both of these. One, I still think, is one of the best experiences I've ever had in a theatre in my life. And I can only remember one very specific scene from it, but it stayed with me my entire life because we saw Super Ted live on stage.
Right.
And there was a point where Super Ted fucking flew from the top of the new theatre down onto the stage. And it was, to this day, like, obviously Mandela effect's got something to do with this. I've no doubt it looked absolutely shit. But as a kid,
Super Ted flying in real life,
fucking amazing.
I think I saw the same thing in the Grand in Swansea.
Yeah, fucking amazing. So there was that, and then weirdly, still under 10, we went to see Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, because that's what you want to be showing 10-year-olds.
Both school trips. Who fucking knows? So yeah, didn't go to the theatre a lot. Didn't go to the cinema that much. It was always like a real treat to go to the cinema. We used to go to our local cinema. If I went like into Cardiff to what I would call the big cinema, that was like, I can remember doing that about 3 times. You know, as a kid, it was always like the local Miners' Welfare Hall, which would have films like 6, 7, 8 months after release sometimes, because that's how it was then, kids. So to be exposed to all of these different versions of Christmas Carol just wasn't a thing. So yeah, as a kid, I think there were 3. There was this, then there was Scrooged, and then Muppets Christmas Carol, which, for all the versions there are today, as far as I'm concerned, and I will fight anyone on this, is the definitive adaptation of the Charles Dickens original. It is very faithful.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I did have a slight disagreement with number 1 yesterday when she said it was boring. So I now only have one. I now only have one child.
Yeah, I mean that's what's wrong with her?
I don't know. We were talking about it, and that's what we were talking about. Having watched Mickey's Christmas Carol on Sunday, and she really enjoyed it, and she really enjoyed the version they went to see with school. But the Muppets version was boring. Apparently, it's like, fuck me. Now, how'd you get to that?
Especially after having seen an adaptation on stage.
Yeah.
Which, like, look, the Muppets Christmas Carol is extremely faithful. It's like almost slavishly so. Like, yes, it's got Muppets in it, but it is very, very close to the text.
Yeah.
Especially the original, before they cut out all the stuff with Belle as well. Very, very close to the text. So, even if you see the best possible stage production, surely the Muppets Christmas Carol just becomes that, but with Muppets.
Well, yeah, this is my thing, but I think from her perspective, and I will try and defend her slightly, is that she doesn't have a great attention span. Like, she'll watch episodes of stuff, and she can sit through about 40 minutes of a film, but then it gets a bit sitting still. She's 8, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of more of that, whereby, I said, the Mickey's Christmas Carol is like, what, 26, 27 minutes?
Yes.
The thing they saw in school was about an hour, but she was with her friends, and if they weren't really watching it, no, it's not really the end of the world sort of thing. Whereas, no, the Muppets is considerably longer, so I think that might have something to do with it. And I think as she gets older, I think she'll possibly appreciate that more, just because of the sense of humor she's got. Which I think, when it hits her, she'll really embrace it. But yeah, for now, I only have one child.
Yeah, I mean, Muppets Christmas Carol tops out with some 80-some-odd minutes.
Something like that.
I mean, thank God she didn't watch the original then with the Belle stuff in as well, because that's a whole extra song, which I personally think should be in there and will argue all day long for it. But it was taken out because kids were getting fucking bored during the middle section of the film, which I will admit does sag a little.
Does slow a bit, yeah.
But that's not the filmmaker's fault. That's the text, and they stick to it. All right?
Yeah.
So anyway, having said all of that, one thing that they do here is basically just fucking obliterate the middle section of the text entirely. Don't really bother with it. Which I'm thankful for, because let's be fair, Daisy Duck's playing the Belle role. And if you're a long-time listener of this podcast, you know my fucking thoughts on Daisy Duck. All right?
So, yeah, I mean, I've got to give it credit, actually. I mean, I say quite familiar with the text now, with the original, with the Dickens novel. But I think giving it its props, knowing what it's doing and knowing its audience the way Disney does, or did at the time they were doing this, I think they realized very quickly that actually the bulk of the stuff you're going to get out of the story comes from seeing him before and seeing him after. The bit with the ghosts, and so the whole stretch in the middle, they've condensed it into about 7 or 8 minutes. And actually, that's probably enough for the type of thing they're creating. You wouldn't want it any longer than that, because it would make the rest of it feel too condensed.
As a writer, and as a filmmaker as well, part of the reason, and I think I may have talked about this on the podcast before, I'm not sure, if not this one, probably over on Mario Bros. Part of the reason I went through a whole Disney renaissance, and part of the reason why now I will argue blind with anyone that Walt Disney is possibly the greatest filmmaker that has ever lived, is because of the natural instinct of storytelling that stemmed with Walt and has carried on, particularly through the animation studios legacy of the company, which is the one thing that Disney animation does better than anyone else, and I mean this, anyone else, is brevity of storytelling. Like, they absolutely, if it is not important, it does not make it in, because especially in these days, this shit was expensive.
I was going to say, I think that
drawing frames that you don't use.
I was going to say, I think that's kind of where it came from, and like even now, well, when you do your computer modeling and stuff, it's different, but it's still time consuming. And if you're not going to use it, there's no fucking point in creating it in the first place, because it's just time, effort, and money that could go on something else. And so you're right. I think that there's an argument that says, look, actually, we know we're not going to use it. There's very little. If you watch sort of the DVD extras and stuff for any of the Disney stuff, when they've got deleted scenes, it's hand-drawn sketches that don't move, just with the voice over the top.
They're just animatics that have been binned. They haven't even gone to ink and paint normally. They just this isn't working. And actually, that's more of a recent thing as well. That tends to be more with the sort of the second generation of Disney films, if you like, the Renaissance stuff, where some stuff was getting computer generated. Because again, if it's computer generated, you've got a little bit more to work with in terms of, I'm going to bin that, it's not working. Like way back in Walt's era, and again, this is why I will herald him as he's just one of the greatest storytellers that has ever lived. All right, I'm just putting that on Front Street now. And that is because before anyone put a pen to fucking paper, they would have hours and hours and days and storyboard meetings of just Walt with sketches up on a wall, talking through it with his entire team. He would act it out. He would go all the way through it, and anything that wasn't landing, anything that wasn't needed, came out then, when it was just rough sketches on a page.
Yeah, because at that point, it doesn't cost you anything.
And anything that needed to go in, if it was sagging, if they needed more gags, business is what called it, then they would put it in there. By the time it really properly got into production, these stories were nailed on. All right, and you can watch any early Disney film you like, okay, and everybody's got their own opinions of what's a good one, what's a bad one. Even in my opinion, one of the worst Disney films ever made, Sleeping Beauty, which was started to come towards the end of that early period anyway, still has that real economy of storytelling. All right, now I have issues with the characters in Sleeping Beauty. I don't have issues with the storytelling. All right, the economy of storytelling is there, and everything in that film works, and it tells you a complete story in just over an hour and change. And that's remarkable. And that's something that Mickey's Christmas Carol manages to do as well. It manages to take the original text, and yes, it's not as faithful as, say, The Muppets is, because it does adapt, as again we talk about a lot. You don't have to stay close to the text. In fact, you should adapt it, and this does. There are bits that we don't need, and so they just go, fuck it off, we don't need that, don't worry about it. Especially pretty much every adaptation, and because it's in the book as well, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is always quite a quick segment, because by that point, I mean, Scrooge has changed really. By the time you get to Act 2, by the time you get to the end of the Ghost of Christmas Past, he's already on the road to redemption. Like everything after that point is just cementing it. So you don't really need a lot of stuff from the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. And they recognize that, and so they skip through that. They skip through the whole,
effectively, that bit.
They skip through the Ghost of Christmas Present pretty much as well. They still have, you still get the Fezziwig's Christmas Party. I nearly said Fozziwigs then. That's how well that is ingrained in me. So, I think the only thing, in fact, that I take now, post Muppets, I take from this as opposed to Muppets Christmas Carol, and this is quickly becoming a Muppets Christmas Carol podcast, so we need to get back on topic here. But the only thing I take from this as opposed to the Muppets is actually Scrooge McDuck, because this was my first exposure really to that character. I cannot see any other iteration, and I cannot even hear the word Scrooge without thinking of Scrooge McDuck. That is the definitive portrayal of Ebenezer Scrooge for me, just because it was the first, and it's a good one. Is the thing. So that's the character distilled for me, and of course then that would be cemented by DuckTales later on. And even when he was popping up in DuckTales, when that was the thing, it was like, oh, it's Scrooge from Christmas Carol. At that point, it wasn't, oh, it's Uncle Scrooge. It's Scrooge from A Christmas Carol. Yeah. So DuckTales for me early on was a series about Scrooge from A Christmas Carol going on a bunch of adventures with a load of nephews that didn't appear in the film. Yeah. So it was all a bit of a head fuck. But that's the main thing I take from this. I think everything else now, rewatching it, and I didn't watch it last year. I think I did watch it the year before. And this is something that I dip in and out. And I think come back to watch it now. So it's not something that's ever really been away, but it's not something I watch as regular as like the Grinch or Charlie Brown Christmas and some of the other things that we've talked about. And I think coming back to it now in rewatching this, that was one of the first things, looking at it with a critical eye, that I took out of it, is that actually, there's a lot of this, which, and I don't mean this as a criticism, okay, because especially when something's been adapted as much as A Christmas Carol has, then it's inevitable that things are going to meld together at once. But so much of this now, unfortunately, feels a little bit redundant to me in the watching of it, because, and I mean, it probably didn't help that I literally watched the Muppets the night before.
Yeah, probably.
So that probably didn't help. And I watched Nightmare Before Christmas the night after. So not that that's an adaptation of Christmas Carol, but it is my favorite movie of all time.
And
so
that's what I'm doing after this. Yeah. When we finish recording, it's ready, queued up, ready to go.
Sandwiching this in the middle probably gave it a bit of a bad rap.
To be fair, of the three, it's probably the weakest.
It definitely is, in my opinion. But that's not to say this is bad. And I don't want to come down on this at all, because it's not bad. It is still excellent. It was excellent then, and it's still excellent now. But yeah, that was one of the first things that jumped out to me, is as I'm watching it, I'm like, I'm really enjoying this, but I saw all of this yesterday, and I saw it all better. Now, look, I've no doubt there are people out there who will argue the other way. They will prefer this to the Muppets. Number one, for instance, no doubt will, because it's fucking shorter, and maybe she responds better to Mickey Mouse and Goofy and Scrooge McDuck than she does to Kermit and Piggy and Rizzo and Gonzo. So horses for courses here, because we're essentially telling the same story.
That's right. And I think that for me, that's probably, you touched on there, the fact that this was the first one. There's always an association thing. If somebody talks to me about Christmas Carol, my first thought is this, and then it'll wander to Muppets, and then to the book, and then to any of the other adaptations. Now that's pretty disrespectful to the book, but fuck it, that's the era we grew up. It is. Yeah. That's the era we grew up in. I mean, certainly. I wasn't a huge reader as a child. I read a lot more now than I ever used to. But that's I mean, we were from an area that celebrated books a great deal. We had a library that was always fucking closed because there was no need to it for any. There was no staff there because they never needed them. So that was it. We had stuff that was on TV. Like, we didn't have pre-recorded shit, so we literally had what we'd recorded off the TV, and this was it. And so I mean, whenever I think of Christmas Carol, this is the first thing that jumps out. Yeah, I don't know whether I prefer this or the Muppets. I can't quite tell because they mean different things to me.
Yeah, you have a deep-rooted connection with this.
And I think that Muppets in general it's probably my first great love. Not Muppets in general, not Muppets Christmas Carol. So there's always me that affinity there as well. But I don't, and I find it very difficult. I remember having this conversation a couple of years ago with Tori and with Jess, that actually, no, I can't pick a winner between these two. They're both excellent in their own way. But to try and compare them makes it's very difficult because they're not the same product, even though it's the same story.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is, if nothing else, and we've banged on about this a lot over all of the podcasts, but especially over on Game of Moans. But if nothing else, this is the perfect example, looking at these two together, of how different an adaptation can be.
Yeah.
We talked about it over on Mario as well when we looked at the Gus Van Sant Psycho remake. You know, and it is that thing, like, yes, this is the same story but told in a different way. And you know, oddly for me, like you mentioned, the Muppets being your first great love, and I adore the Muppets as well, but more than anything, I'm a huge Disney person, absolutely huge Disney person, as I've just banged on about for the last 5 minutes. And so to take that and to add in the gang, you know, to add in Mickey and Minnie and Goofy and Donald, not Daisy, but to add all of these in, should be like, that should be it for me. That should be like, yeah, the Muppets is good, but this is better because it's all of this.
Yeah.
You know. But I don't know. I think there's something so special about Muppets for me that this just doesn't tick those boxes. But I say I don't want this to be a Muppets podcast because it's about Mickey's Christmas Carol, and I don't want to dump on this because of that, because I did enjoy this, you know, and I do still have a lot to bring to it as a Disney fan. You know, when you look at, you know, we've got voices here in that you just don't get anymore, right? Because sadly the people are gone, and we're talking about some of the absolute greats here. You know, we've also, though, weirdly, I mean, and this is another thing that I think it sets it in a point in time with me, despite the fact that I saw this a lot as a child, as I say, and I think probably early on it was also like what I thought Mickey Mouse and Goofy and everything was, you know, like prior to even seeing Mickey shorts, I thought like this is what, because we got a lot of these, especially around Christmas time, we would get like, this was on ITV every year, but rather than getting like sort of the Mickey shorts and the silly symphonies and stuff, and even then, you know, the Warner Brothers stuff and the Merry Melodies and things like that, we would get a lot of like, we would get Mickey's Christmas Carol. I distinctly remember we used to get Prince and the Pauper all the time as well. So, you know, I saw Mickey in these kind of things rather than in the shorts. And so this should be my first instinctual memories of those characters. All right. And whilst perhaps, you know, the likes of Mickey and Scrooge and everybody still sound fairly consistent, one thing that always grabs me whenever I watch this now is just how different Goofy sounds. Because it's not Bill Farmer. And Bill Farmer didn't start voicing Goofy until the late 80s, early 90s. I think probably like 88, 89, something like that. I don't know. But his voice is so intrinsically linked to that character for me now, because he's done it since, and because, you know, as again previously mentioned, I'm such a huge fan of that character and of Goof Troop especially. I find it difficult hearing that kind of lower pitched Goofy that we get in this. I find it and I know he's Marley's ghost here as well, so you could maybe argue there's narrative reasons for it, but it's not that at all. It's simply that there's a change of voice actor. But it just sounds odd to me, you know, and that's no disrespect to the voice actor. It's Hal Smith, who is wonderful. And you know, again, likewise, you can show me any Winnie the Pooh cartoon that he's not in, and I go, well, hang on a minute, something's wrong. But I don't. It's always, whenever I watch it, it's all going great guns for me until Goofy shows up, and I go, hang on a minute, something's wrong. And then it takes me out to a point where I've got a minute before I'm back in, because I'm like, that's not my Goofy. What's going on?
And the problem with that is that because it is so brief, I mean, it's like 26, 27 minutes, I think it runs to. So if you're pulled out for a minute in what is effectively the climax of Act One, it's where we're setting up the rest of our story. You can't afford to lose that time. And I think that for me, in watching it, that was a bit where, certainly, so watching it with the kids on Sunday, that was a bit where they really engaged, because that's a bit where you see, you know the door knocker changes. So all of a sudden you've got this I know it's animated, but you've got this physical comedy. You've got the shadow creeping up the stairs behind him, all this sort of stuff. And all of a sudden,
and that's a great bit. That's one of the best Marley appearances.
Bit.
Yeah, the Goofy shadow creeping up the stairs, fantastic bit. Really, really funny.
Yeah, and I think the only bit that gets me with it, with the whole Marley bit, and you talked about obviously things like Goof Troop and what's come later on. At some point, I don't know when it happened, and you may know this off part, you may not, but at some point, Goofy became a lot more slapstick than he originally was. Like, he was always pretty slapstick anyway, And you've got the bit in here was a prime example with the cane and falling down the stairs and stuff like that. So you always had that element to the character. But as you went into, and it may have just been a sort of societal shift where we went into the 90s and things became a bit more violent and a bit more explicit. Like, in things like Goof Troop, where he'd plug something into the wall and get electrocuted.
Yeah.
The humor became a lot less subtle with Goofy as you went on. And it's kind of what we expect with the character. But going back and seeing this, whereby actually it's a bit more daily, and it's choreographed all hell, and you can see it coming a mile off with the cane, and as soon as he goes up the stairs, you get the thing about the top step, and you can, because the frame doesn't come away from the door, so something's going to happen behind it. I don't know, it just seems a bit more subtle than you get in later iterations.
I think you're right. I think that's a societal shift rather than is a shift in the character. I think Goofy as a character has always fulfilled that role. I mean, certainly way back when, in the early days of Goofy's first appearances, it was all the public information films, or the parodies of the public information films. So it was like Goofy as DIY dad, basically, like how to put up a shelf, and he would inevitably wreck the fucking house and smash himself with a hammer and stuff like that. But yes, it was gentler comedy because society was gentler. Whereas, once we get into the 90s, everything's got to be extreme. So all of a sudden, instead of just accidentally hitting his thumb with a hammer, yes, he's fucking electrocuting himself and setting the house on fire and crashing the car. Yeah. And it just because we became that as a society, And when you take that through to the nth degree now, to the extreme of the new Mickey Mouse shorts, which I love dearly, but are such a massive divergence from everything that's come before. And Goofy is just chaos incarnate in those. Yeah. And the character itself, the character design of Goofy in those shorts is the stuff of fucking nightmares. How any kid can look at those shorts.
I'm not a huge fan of the new ones. The storytelling is good, but the set, I just don't like the character design on any of them, to be honest.
I absolutely love it because I like that aesthetic, but it is not those characters. That's the thing. There is a disconnect for me.
So to me, it feels more like they should be Happy Tree Friends.
Yeah, it's very John Kay. All right, it's very, very Ren and Stimpy influenced, clearly, and it's very rough. It's very sketchy. That's fine. I like that. That's an animation style that I like, and I am attracted to it as an art style. But that isn't Mickey and Co.
No, it's not. I think that's my problem. I mean, Jess has like a bedspread and a pillow set that she was bought years ago. I say years ago, probably about 3 years ago, and it has that version of Minnie Mouse on it. And I remember the first time I saw it, I thought, that's not Minnie Mouse. That's not what Minnie Mouse looks like. And I hadn't seen this iteration at the time. And going at it now, and as you said, they are far more chaotic, and they have that John Kay Happy Tree Friends sort of anarchy to them.
They really
and it's
do.
Not Mickey Mouse. That's the problem I have with it.
But I think the key is, I think this is something that I think a lot of people level at that, and my counter argument is always that, I mean, as I say, I enjoy them, and it's not Mickey Mouse, but it's clearly intended for a different audience. It is intended for more mature children, so tweens and up, and adults, because the traditional Mickey Mouse still exists. It's just over in Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and Mickey and the Roadster Racers. Yeah. And all of that stuff, like that's all still there, and even in the cinematic shorts, things like Get a Horse, which even that was fucking ages ago now, but it's still, that Mickey is still there. It's just this I kind of treat as its own separate thing, and even when you see it in merchandising as well, both versions of Mickey exist side by side, and you can pretty much buy whichever one you want, alongside fucking hipster Mickey, which is a thing that I detest as well, but that's a thing now as well. Hipster Mickey's a whole fucking thing.
I've not come across that.
Google hipster Mickey when we're done, and then bleach your eyes.
So I've got a cheeseburger around here somewhere.
Yeah, but this, what we think of as traditional Mickey then again comes back to this. It's very much so. And I think forever the look of Mickey Mouse to me, because different generations have a different look to Mickey as well. And one of the things that's in the new shorts as well is they've gone back to a more traditional black and white face that we had originally as well. But this, our era then, in the late 70s and early 80s, he looked more, what's the word for it? Well, he just looked more like a mouse, I think, is the thing. Like he had the fawny brown face, the sort of almost fleshy tones. He was more rounded as well.
It's funny, actually. It's funny you should say about the fact that there are different looks to the different looks to the characters, and so certainly the core characters. Yeah, many years ago, my cousin's roommate in uni, he was a fantastic artist. You know, he did a degree in art. He exhibited all over the country. He was really successful. He applied to Disney for a job with the animation team, and they gave various assignments throughout the interview process. Draw a, I don't know, for argument's sake, wouldn't have been this, but draw a car that's a person, and draw us an airplane, make up a new character. All of that he was fine. He absolutely sailed through. And the last one was, right, draw Mickey Mouse. And that was the bit he fell down on, because his Mickey Mouse didn't look enough like Mickey Mouse, because there was a very much a set thing of dimensions have to be this, and color tones have to be that, and the ears have to be this round and this far apart, and all. And yeah, they were scrutinizing it. It was a case of, right, this is the size paper you've got to draw, and so we expect you to fill this much paper, and we expect the proportions to be the same as this one. And it was, I remember my cousin saying it was absolutely incredible that he brought the drawing home. And if you didn't know, you wouldn't have known it wasn't by one of their people. But that was the bit after 4 days worth of interviews and assignments and all the rest of it. He couldn't draw Mickey Mouse the way they wanted Mickey Mouse drawn.
And that, that's not just Mickey Mouse. That would
have been the whole gamut, wouldn't it?
That's animation or even commercialized comic book art in general. You need to draw to model, because as we mentioned, this stuff's fucking expensive. And if you aren't drawing to model, and look, you are not the only person. You might be the lead on Mickey, but you're not the only person drawing Mickey. All right, so everything goes to model. Simple as that. And especially, if we really want to go at it, and I don't, because I don't take this view of the Disney company at all, but we do have to acknowledge them as a massive multimedia conglomerate. That is their mascot. You absolutely have to know how to draw Mickey Mouse if you're going to be drawing for Disney, and you have to draw an on-brand Mickey Mouse. That's what you have to do. And yeah, it is hard. Like, there are, like, one of the things, you go to any Disney park in the world, and I guarantee you they'll do a drawing class on how you draw Mickey Mouse. You go into their animation studios, they will give you a class on how to draw Mickey Mouse. And it seems very simple. It's 3 circles, and they boil it down like this, like, oh yeah, you draw 3 circles, then you draw the nose, then you draw the mouth. And it's like, no. There's a lot more to it than
there's
that.
But no, I mean, that's it. The guy, my cousin's old housemate. So the drawing he came back with. So if you work for Disney and you draw Mickey Mouse, you will know. But it was sort of, for I would say, if it was like 5mm squared graph paper, he might have been like 2mm out on one dimension, and that was enough. It was that sort of, and so they do. There are lots of tutorials and stuff. You draw your 3 circles, and but it's fucking not. It's like saying you tune an engine. You just lift the bonnet, pour the oil in, and shut it. There's a lot more to it, and you're right. That's their brand at the end of the day, and it's got to be spot on. But I do find it quite funny. Then obviously it's changed. There have been so many iterations, so many changes to it over the generations that actually you could say that and say, well, actually, the one he drew then might have been closer to the one that came 5 years later. And if he'd gone 5 years later, he might have had it. So it's quite strange, because
but I think,
as much as saying Mickey Mouse is Mickey Mouse, it's just it's always going to evolve, isn't it?
Yeah, I think what it comes down to, though, isn't so much that he didn't draw the Mickey Mouse as Mickey Mouse looked then. It's that he clearly wasn't skilled enough to draw to model. Is the thing. Like, here's the model. You draw this. You will be given what you need to. It will be, this is Mickey Mouse. Draw this. And if you can't draw him then, if he'd gone 5 years later, it would have still been, this is Mickey Mouse.
This is the model. It's just maybe a slightly
different model. But the model would have changed. So it is, it is a transferable skill that for whatever reason he didn't have. Now, there can be an argument there about whether that's a good thing or not, because obviously it leaves very little room for creativity. But that's the sad truth of it. If you're working for somebody like Disney and you're drawing Mickey Mouse, then you have to fucking draw Mickey Mouse. Now, the skill, this is gonna get contentious. I bet somebody complains about this. I would argue all day long, as somebody that cannot draw as well, mind you. I can barely draw a fucking stick figure. All right. But the skill isn't in drawing Mickey Mouse. The skill isn't in drawing Donald Duck, because that's art just like any other art. You can do that over in Disney comics. the skill here is in animating Mickey Mouse. You know, and when we talk about animators, and when we talk about how much we respect animators, we're not talking about their ability to draw lines on a page. We're talking about their ability to breathe life into those lines and make them move.
Yeah.
And that's where the skill comes into it. You know, it is these actors, they are actors. You know, Mickey and Donald, they are actors. Is moving them around their scene.
Yeah.
And that's what a real animator does. It's not about drawing Mickey Mouse to spec. It's about how well can you make Mickey move. And that's where your creativity and your freedom of expression comes through.
Yeah.
Because that's your scene that you're working on. You know, there are some great examples of that in this. Actually, we talked about Goofy walking up the stairs earlier, and just everything about Goofy as Marley's ghost comes through immediately. Like, you recognize the silhouette anyway, but his whole movements, you know, the way he's constantly almost falling forward or backwards down the stairs. You know, later on when we get to the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, and we get Pegleg Pete, you know, as soon as you see his silhouette and as soon as the cigar comes out, like, you don't need to know any more. Just the way he's carrying himself in the scene, you're like, oh, that's Pete. And all you can see is a hooded figure at this point, but the way they're making him move and the way he's holding himself, and you just know instinctively that's Pete. And so that's the skill of a good animator. And look, I pin my colors to the mast here. This is no secret to anybody. In my opinion, Disney are the best in the world at it. And this is why, you know, because you get products like this that will endure. You know, we're talking about something that's nearly 40 years old. Okay, that will be 40 years old. Actually, had we done it next year, I think it was 82 it came out, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
We should have fucking done this next year, shouldn't we? It's undoubtedly going to be a fucking remaster or something.
Which I will be buying.
Yeah, so will I probably. But, you know, we're talking about something that's nearly 40 years old, and it endures, you know, not just because we watched it when we were kids, because there was tons of shit that we watched as kids, especially around Christmas time. I don't rewatch all of it on a regular. You know, we've a semi-regular like this. This is endured because it's a quality product, because everything about it just exudes quality, you know?
And as I say, it's even extent, it's not just the animation, it's not just the art and the style, even the writing. In that scene, there's a really good gag where Marley's talking about how he used to rob the widows and cheat the orphans and all this sort of stuff. And he's, you know, and you know what all that meant? And Scrooge says, you were really good at it. And Goofy, and he gets really proud. He's like, oh shit, no, that's the wrong thing. And then no, if you're gonna end up like me, only worse. But it's just that, again, that really easy joke, but you still end up, you know, even when you expect it, you still end up snickering about it, because you're like, yeah, that's really fucking funny. Because of course he's going to be proud, because that's who he was, but he's not allowed to be. And whereas certainly in Dickens, and when you get to Muppets, the gags you get in the Muppets are far more, a lot of them are far more related to the fact that you've got a narrator and they're breaking the fourth wall quite a lot. There are quite a lot of gags
very
around
sophisticated, especially for its time.
Yeah. Whereas they've not done that here. They've just gone, fuck it, we'll just use the characters to tell a joke that you're not expecting. So a lot of the stuff in story with the Muppets, as opposed to in narration, is very straight and very, very, it's quite heavy at times. Whereas here they've gone, fuck it, we've got 25 minutes. Let's just make it fucking up. Let's make it entertaining and make it funny. And they've again, it's not talking about an adaptation as opposed to a straight remake or reformatting. And we talked about this with Spider-Man last time out. We talked about this a lot on Game of Thrones. So if you're adapting it, adapt it for the medium and the audience, and that's exactly what they've done with this. And that type of joke, and then you get it later on as well, where it's where Gus Christmas Present shows him the Cratchit house, and you've got Tiny Tim cutting his them. He goes tuck into his meal, and it's a single pea on a plate, and he cuts into it to make it last longer. Little things like that shouldn't be funny, but that's, for me, that him cutting that pea is an enduring image for the last 40 years. That's something that always springs to mind.
It almost seems a little bit prescient at the moment.
Well, yeah.
You know, the way this country's fucking heading. We'll all be cutting peas next week.
Well, that's it.
I think there's a lot of stuff, actually, as well, in this adaptation. Like we said, for us, it was first one out of the gate. There had been adaptations of Christmas Carol before this, but for us, it was first one out of the gate. And so this kind of is, or whilst Muppets is the definitive, this kind of always is the touchstone for me, the one I go back to. And there is a lot of stuff that I see even in things like Muppets and even in Scrooge that is in here. And I kind of look at it and go, and again, it comes back to the animators. There's things like the one that always sticks out with me, and it's done better in Muppets, don't get me wrong, but it's very similar to the scene here, you know, when you get the carol singers coming around, and Scrooge just grabs the holly wreath and bundles it up and hurls it out the door at him.
Yeah.
And of course, in Muppets Christmas Carol, it's the little bunny, and he knocks him over into the snow. But it happens here as well. He throws it after the debt collector, not the debt collector, sorry, the charity collectors here. And he picks the wreath up and throws it out at them. And you can't help but look at it later on then in Muppets and go, well, did they just lift that? Because, it seems like an obvious thing to do, but when you look at it, like even the framing of those shots,
it's very similar.
Very, very similar. And so again, you go, well, did they just half-inch it? I don't know.
There are a few shots that actually I didn't, as I've not pegged it before. When I was watching this week, I did peg. There are quite a few shots which do look very, very close.
I mean, you mentioned the door knocker, and that's obviously something that's in every version of Christmas Carol.
Yeah, that's always going to be there because it's in the book.
Yeah, it's in the book. But again, like now, because I've watched Muppets more, my normal go-to for that is to see Statler and Waldorf coming out of the door knockers. But early on it was Goofy, and still, straight after Statler and Waldorf, that it's Goofy that I'm going to there. Yeah. Of the door knocker contorting into Goofy's face, and it's for a Disney product, when it does contort into Goofy's face, that's pretty fucking frightening, actually.
Yeah, it's quite dark.
It is quite dark, and if it wasn't Goofy, it would be terrifying.
Yeah.
So they don't. I think it's fair to say they don't really. All right, it doesn't go perhaps as dark as Muppets does, but they don't really hold back on this. Like obviously there's some fuckery when Goofy shows up because he's Goofy, so he's
Goofy is always going to be.
There's going to be some fuckery, but the door knocker is quite scary. As I say, when you see Peg Leg Pete later on, he's quite an imposing character. Whereas that ghost always is imposing. Yeah. So there is a lot of stuff that where they tend to skew a little bit darker than perhaps your average Mickey cartoon would. Yeah. They haven't shied away from it.
And I think actually this is quite a surprising one when you think about it, because the original text is very dark. It's very bleak in places. Mm-hmm. You get the whole thing with the Ghost Christmas Past about the children and one being want and one being greed and are there no workhouses, all this sort of stuff, and it's quite a bleak landscape to begin with. It's very difficult to see how you can lighten it, and one thing you've got to give Mixed Christmas Carol credit for is that it does take something that's very heavy, very dark, and make it accessible to children in a way that I've not really. I mean, Muppets aside, I've not really seen anywhere else. And there have been so many versions of this across the years and across the myriad of kids' TV shows we've had. I don't think anywhere has done it as successfully as those two, certainly. But I think this is probably the one for me that seems more child-based. I mean, Muppets is a Muppet, so you're always going to get double entendres. You're always going to get innuendo. You're always going to get a little bit of just hang on a minute, did they just say that? Which you never get with Disney. So for me, this is probably the best example I've seen where somebody's taken that text and gone, right, we can make this funny and whimsical and still serious, but actually we can do something with it. And you can't do that, unfortunately, without going a little bit darker than you'd normally skew, because you can't have this subject matter without skewing slightly dark in the first place. And I think that's where most things fall down, even the things that are supposedly made for children, is that they actually become a bit too bleak and a bit too grim. Yeah, and it's very difficult to. I mean, I know that's the way we are socially at the moment. As it's 1 in 4 kids live in poverty. And there are food shortages. There are people who don't have enough money and they can't afford to buy food. They can't buy new clothes because they're all too busy paying for their iPhones and Sky and shit like that. But so there are things that are relatable here. You don't get the escapism. Whereas if you look at the Disney version, you say, right, okay, well, actually, aside from the fact it's Mickey Mouse and the Scrooge McDuck, you can just sort of escape into it. Which actually, it's a bit of something and nothing for half an hour that I can not think about the fact I haven't eaten since 2 days ago. And I think there's an inherent lightness to it which doesn't lend itself to a Christmas Carol, which so many other versions do. And if you look at the Jim Carrey animated version from 10-15 years ago, which is also on Disney Plus, that's probably the most faithful retelling I've seen in an animation. But it's so fucking grim.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched it purely because it looked so grim, and because whilst I reread the text semi-regularly as well, I don't read it every Christmas, but I do like it. I do like the text. But yes, it's a heavy fucking read. It's not reading the fucking Grinch. You know, it doesn't take long. You can blitz it in a night if you're really in the mood.
If you're in a sit down and read mood and you're not being interrupted every 2 fucking minutes, you can do it in a couple of hours. It's not a long text.
No, but it is grim.
It's dense. It really is heavy, and it really you come out with thinking, fuck me.
Yeah, and as you say, I think they completely remove that here. Like, whilst there are darker elements, it definitely is accessible to children. I think a big part of that is in the condensation of Tiny Tim's segment as well. Like, Tiny Tim is barely in this, and so there's enough that you get it, you know, when it's given to us, the information is given to us that Tiny Tim is going to die unless Scrooge changes his ways and becomes a father to Tiny Tim and things like that. It's in there, but they don't dwell on it in the way that some of the others do. And the Muppets is very good at that as well. They have just enough Tiny Tim.
It's there.
Yeah, but again, you know, we're not trying to compare the two here. This one has next to none. Like, Tiny Tim is almost an afterthought here.
Yeah, I mean, you only see Tiny Tim twice, don't you?
You do.
Once with the Gus was present, and then once at the end, when it's all said and done, and he takes the toys around. So I don't think you see any more than that, do you?
No. Likewise, Donald's role stripped all the way back as well. Yeah. So they pick and choose the bits that they need to strip back, and they do very well at that, and then they laser focus in on Scrooge. You have to have some parts of his relationship with, depending on the text, Belle, Clara, whatever you want to call her, depending on what version you're watching. Even though it's Clarabelle, it depends which version you're fucking watching. But they have to take a certain amount of that, because that's intrinsic to who Scrooge is. But again, I think they do just enough of that and then breeze past it. I do think when we get to their eventual breakup here, I think it's a little heavy-handed, if I'm honest. The thing is actually trying to charge her money is completely different to, well, I'm not ready for us to get married yet because I haven't saved enough. That's one thing. You owe me money, bitch, is entirely another.
Yeah, and I mean that whole scene, it's played for laughs. It's played for, he's counting his money and she's there, and the fact that he can't even see her over the pile of money. No, there's something to read into that. That's quite important. And then he pulls out the foreclosure document, and she runs off. Yeah. And slams the door, and all the money falls down. And you immediately forget that he's just been an absolute cunt nugget to this woman.
Yeah, horrible.
It's funny because now he was at 3,900 and something, and now he's going to start again.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway from that scene, is that he loves money, and he has a lot of it. Not the fact that he just foreclosed on her cottage, the fact that he just ended their relationship. It's about him and money, and I think that's
credit to the storytelling as well, though, as much as that's criticizing the scene.
It works in terms of what they're doing with the character and the time they've got and how they're putting it together. It really does work, because they've not dwelled on that story too much.
No,
but the scene itself, I think, as you said,
very distasteful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's entirely distasteful.
Horrible. It's fucking horrible. At a point where we're supposed to be starting to feel quite sorry for Scrooge.
Well, that's it. We've had the scene of them dancing and this whole thing of where did it go wrong? I remember her, and he's talking so fondly about his colleagues and his friends, and then we get the bit with her, and she makes the dance and all the rest of it. And you're starting to think, hang on, how did he get from this character here, who's shy and quiet and seems good-natured and all the rest of it, to being this absolute cockwomble? And instead of exploring that, they go, right, we'll throw one scene in where he clearly loves gold more than her. And as a result, he just can't stand the sight of her, and he fucks her off.
Yeah.
It works. It works. In terms of brevity, it's fucking genius. But I think if they were going to expand anything,
it should be that.
It should be that, because Tiny Tim, as I say, you don't want to dwell too much on the fact that a small child is going to die of poverty-related illness. You don't want to dwell on that in a kid's cartoon.
Yeah. So what does he die of? I don't think that's ever even explained in the text, is it? He basically
it's like pneumonia or no.
Yeah, but they never say it. He basically dies of being a cripple, like that. They don't say why he's the way he is.
Yeah, it's just
the way he is. That sounds horrible, but you know what I mean. Yeah. They don't say why he's crippled.
Yeah, the implication is just that he's infirm, and he's infirm. He doesn't get enough food. He hasn't got the chances to thrive because their house is always cold. He doesn't have enough food, all the rest of it. So just the implication is that because he wasn't in a workhouse where even in shitty conditions, he just still had warm, dry surroundings.
Yeah.
That's why he died. He died of exposure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's never explicit.
Yeah. And so yeah, that scene with Daisy anyway, and Scrooge, to go back to it, like it works really well, and it is a good scene. Again, it's very funny.
Yeah.
But you're watching it going, hang on, what a fucking cock knocker.
Yeah. Why is she hanging around for him in the first place? Because clearly he hasn't just turned into this overnight.
Because as previously mentioned, she's a gigantic fucking whore, and he's got a great big pile of money. Like she's just digging gold. But also, more importantly, like, and I know I'm saying they're actors in scenes, and they are. I do think of them like this, but that's his niece. Like, that's Donald's girlfriend. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Like he's creepy old paedophile uncle at this point. That's weird.
I hadn't thought of it that way, I've got to be honest.
That's fucking weird.
That is fucking weird.
However you slice it, that is fucking weird, isn't it? Like his nephew's girlfriend. That's fucking odd. And
it's not as odd as you think, actually.
That's my baggage. That's my baggage that I bring in there, right? My baggage with these characters, because that's who they are to me.
Yeah.
But I can't not think that when I'm watching it. But hang on, she fucks Donald. What are you doing? This is weird, you creepy old man. Like,
I'd not really thought that much about it, to be honest.
But and they literally could have cast anyone else. Didn't have to be Daisy Duck, did it?
Could have been any random duck.
Doesn't even have to be a duck.
Well, yeah,
why does it have to be a duck? Just because Mickey and Minnie are a same species couple. Like, there are all sorts of anthropomorphic species within the Mickey and Friends universe.
Yeah, true.
Like, he doesn't have to get it on with a duck. He could get it on with.
Although anatomically, I imagine there's more compatibility.
Well, because of the whole giant corkscrew cock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got to go somewhere.
It's going to cause some problems. But then, I mean, there's probably other birds, that he could shack up with. Like,
maybe. But then they don't spend his money as well, so yeah.
Or
do that.
Just draw, as you say, another random duck. Doesn't have to be Daisy.
Yeah.
All right, I get that there's star power associated with Daisy, because
not fucking much.
No, but there is, because she's still a recognizable figure.
Yeah.
It's weird to me. It's very weird to me.
Yeah, it's not something I've dwelled on, I've got to be honest.
These are thoughts that I have. I'm sorry. Nobody listening to this is going to be surprised by
this is true. This is very true.
These things that occur to me in the watching of Mickey's Christmas Carol. I'm sorry.
I will do an acid test. I'm out with people from work next Thursday, before we finish Christmas. And one of them's a regular listener, so I'll make sure she's listened to this before we go out. And just
see if she finds it weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's German, so her sense of weird is a bit strange.
Yeah, but not incest weird. Like, all right, maybe if they were shitting on each other, then she wouldn't find it weird, because Germans. But, corkscrew penises.
Maybe that's the thing in Europe. I don't know.
Corkscrew penises and incest is not a thing anyway. That's just not a thing. As far as I know. Maybe I live a sheltered life.
Maybe. I mean, the internet's full of weird and wonderful shit.
I mean, I've seen a lot of that weird and wonderful shit, and I haven't come across corkscrew penises and incest just yet.
What, together or just in general?
I have seen plenty of corkscrew penises, because that is a rabbit hole that I went down, was ducks' penises. Like, this didn't come out of nowhere. This is something that somebody told me once, and I got fascinated with. So, but I mean, no, we're not going there.
No, we did that. If listeners, you want that, go back to the Howard the Duck episode.
Is that when it was? I know I've spent some hours talking about duck in these shows.
Yeah, there's a good 10 minutes on the Howard the Duck Mario episode.
Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't have to be Daisy Duck, right? So that's a stumbling block that I've got that I simply cannot get over with this. Is why is Scrooge fucking Daisy Duck?
Yeah, I didn't have an issue with that, but yeah,
it's the same as, like, where do Huey, Dewey, and Louie come from?
Duckburg.
Yeah, but where do they come from? Like, how do they fit into this fucked up family tree? Because there's Uncle Scrooge and Uncle Donald. So are they?
Presumably there's a father somewhere.
Or is Donald the father? Or are they the love child of Scrooge and Daisy? But they can't call him dad because that's wrong.
Maybe they don't know.
Yeah, because that's wrong.
Maybe there's these kids that grow up with lots of aunts and uncles but don't know who their parents are.
Got it. We're fucking on to you, Scrooge. We're on to you.
That's why he fucked her off.
That's why he takes him in and looks after him and stuff, because he fucking knows, he's full on guilty. And that's why they're all a bit fucked as well in the head. That's why they're all like troublemakers and shit, because, broken home.
Well, that's just because they're kids. Kids are assholes.
Well, kids are assholes. Yeah, especially duck kids, I suppose. But we're fucking onto it. There you go. We're onto it.
That's it.
Anyway,
that was a detour off, wasn't it?
Welcome
it's Christmas. It's Christmas. Fuck it, we'll allow it.
Yeah. Another week, another show where we go on a random fucking detour for hours.
I think this is something like the 93rd week in a row.
Who fucking knows? I've lost count. So, okay, so where are we in the story? Right. So we've gone through the whole middle section bit, which I think we said it at the start. Like, you're right. They just condense all of that, and they just kind of go, well, you don't need it, And I think this is the key difference between this and just about any other animated adaptation, and traditionally any Disney feature-length adaptation as well. Because of course it's not feature-length. I'm aware as I'm saying that this is a special, but the temptation here would be to shoehorn in a song or two at this point.
Yes,
and to move the narrative forward in song. But this doesn't do that at all. There's no "I want" song at the start. There's no exposition heavy song in the middle where they're all going on a quest. There's no traditional musical structure to this, which is kind of what you would expect.
It's what you expect, but I think actually, in doing that, you probably look at adding 8-10 minutes. And
I probably had a time scale for network TV.
Yeah,
the thing.
Because I mean, if this is 26, 27 minutes, you're looking at a 30-minute slot.
Yeah.
So you stick your ad breaks in, and you're kind of there, and you're golden. But I also think that by doing that, and if you look at probably after about 20 minutes, there's a section of Frozen where they kind of shoehorn too much in terms of music.
Oh, don't get me started. And how unbalanced the songs are in Frozen. That's a podcast on its own.
It is. But I mean, if you look at that sort of middle section of that, that's the same. It's like, okay, there's too much music. There are too many songs. There's too much going on, and it completely ruins your pacing and it ruins your story. And I think that's the problem they'd have here. If they try to do, even if you try to follow the conventional structure for music and these things, you would find actually it's going to rip your pace out, because this moves at quite a lick. And I think anything else is going to just completely slow you down, and it's going to drag out the middle to a point where you're going to get to sort of 20, 25 minutes, go, oh, fuck, it's still 5 minutes that's left. And you know it's going to be a song.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm not arguing for there being songs. I just think, again, this is traditionally that point where it pop up, and as you're watching it, it just skims past that entirely, and so it does just nip along at this. It is a breakneck speed. It is like Christmas Carol inside of 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's like the Olaf version of Christmas Carol, isn't it?
It is. It's like Olaf narrates Christmas carols. Incidentally, again, another recommendation for you all if you've not watched those on Disney Plus.
Although, can I just say,
storytelling.
If you watch them on Disney Plus, skip to episode 6 where you get the fucking things all together. Because otherwise, by the time you watch episode 1 and you do the credits, and then it runs for like 50 seconds, and then you get the end. By the time you then wait for the next episode thing to pop up, it's like, for fuck's sake. I got to episode 6, and I was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
We did the same thing. Watched them all in one row anyway, because they were fucking hilarious. Then we got to episode 6, and we're like, right, okay, that's literally all of those edited together. I really should have read the descriptions first.
Yeah, I was fucking fuming when I saw that.
Me too. I was fucking livid.
But yeah,
I'm glad it wasn't just me. I
was sat here, and the last couple of weeks, as I'm changing jobs, so I'm kind of winding down. And there was a period of about a week where I was like, oh, fuck it, I can't be asked to any work. I should have just quit. I should have just gone now, not work my notice. Yeah. So I was like, fuck it, TV's there. I put it on, and I was literally right. Oh, that's finished, right? Next episode. So, and then you wait for the thing to cycle through. Yeah. And I got to the last one. I hit play, and it was like. And he was like, oh, you motherfucker.
And Disney Plus is really bad for that as well. It takes ages for the next episode.
Yes, it's a good 10-15 seconds for that to come up.
And if you back out before that comes out, it doesn't register that you've watched the fucking episode. So when you go back in, you can't go next episode. So anyway, we're going down another tangent again. This is kind of moaning about Disney Plus.
I'm not moaning about Disney Plus. I love Disney Plus.
So
just
do I.
That one particular fucking thing annoyed me.
Yeah, but yeah, thoroughly recommend that as well. Now I'm married and have feet has become a saying in this house. Because it broke us. But to get back on topic, so we get through all of that middle section. We've condensed Tiny Tim out of it. We've condensed Daisy out of it. But yet, like, and this again is just how good these storytellers really are and how good a product this is. Because I feel like traditionally, if we were watching anything else, I would be moaning like fuck at this point because we would be getting to Act 3, and I would be going, "You haven't earned this. You haven't fucking earned this at all." Because all of a sudden the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come shows up and scares the shit out of him, and he's a new man. You haven't fucking earned this.
Yeah.
But they absolutely do. It's just
they
cut out all of the fat. It's things like giving us just that one scene with Daisy. That is all we need to understand.
That's all you need. And I think this is the thing: is that you get for every ghost, you get one key scene.
Yes.
And it's not dwelled on. It's not an amalgamation of this and this. Is right. This is the fucking scene. This is the bit we're focusing on. And then we move on, and then this is the bit we focus on, and then we move on. And so, yeah, you're right. Generally, if you were looking at this, and you're thinking, right, if you were doing it longer, you'd have more time to put stuff in. But generally, you'd be thinking, right, you could have stuck another 10 minutes of this and really earned that third act.
Yeah.
But actually, in not doing so, I think they've actually kept it to a reasonable pace. Because if they'd done that, I don't think I can all but guarantee we would be moaning it's too fucking long and too fucking slow.
It's the fucking magic of Disney. It really is. Like they're just the best at what they do, and will always be the best at what they do. Because we were talking about somebody's ability to draw Mickey Mouse, but that is the quality control process inside the studio. Yeah, now and again they'll misfire. Everybody misfires now and again. Yeah, and there'll be cutbacks, and they're a business at the end of the day. Yeah. All right, so things will go cyclical, but they are absolutely the fucking A game at what they do. And you know, and this, don't forget, this is at a period where the studio were in a dip.
Yeah.
Like 82, Disney isn't by no means like it's on the fucking skids.
Yeah.
Like it's very nearly about to collapse under its own weight, and they still put out a product like this.
Yeah.
You know, and yes, okay, maybe it's a safe bet because it's Mickey Mouse, and they could do it now. You know, they could put out Mickey Mouse now, and everybody's going to watch. If they just dropped a new Mickey Mouse cartoon, traditional Mickey Mouse cartoon, not the shorts, if they just dropped a new Mickey Mouse special on Disney Plus now, everybody on their fucking dogs is going to watch it over Christmas.
Yeah,
because it's Mickey Mouse. Like I say, even with the new ones, they dropped that series where Mickey and Minnie are touring around the world.
Yeah.
I forget what they call it. Watched all of those because there's a whole bunch of Mickey Mouse shorts. Yes, they're in the new style, but still, I'll watch those. So yes, there's a certain element of this was a safe bet. It's a story that everybody knows. It's a well-loved classic, and we're going to throw fucking Mickey and Minnie and Donald and Goofy and fucking Daisy at it. Is Pluto in this? He's not, is he?
Yes, he is, very, very briefly. I think at the end he's in it very briefly. Yes, he's pulling Donald's wagon. So when Scrooge runs out in front of him and he has to slam on
he has to, yeah. But he has no actual...
No, he's not in the story now.
Why'd they do Pluto dirty? Like, you've got fucking Daisy, but you don't give us Pluto.
Yeah, nobody wants to see Scrooge McDuck shagging Pluto.
Well, I'm not saying he should shag Pluto. I'm just saying Pluto should have something to do.
Yeah, but there's not really anywhere to fit him, is there?
Make him the Ghost of Christmas Present.
Talks too much.
Excitable.
Ghost of Christmas Present talks too much. Pluto
doesn't have to. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the fact it's Willie the Giant, and especially the Disney nerd in me loves the fact that they've used Willie the Giant. Plus,
yeah, I don't think you could use Pluto in that role without changing Pluto.
Yeah, but still, Pluto should
have it's good to fun somewhere for him. Yeah,
fucking important character. You know, like all right, kind of sucks that Chip and Dale don't have anything to do either. But I'll accept that they're not in it because they're not quite as important. Like Pluto's a cornerstone character.
Yeah,
and way, way, way more likable than Daisy fucking Duck.
So it's syphilis, to be fair.
This is turning into an anti-Daisy podcast again. It's just Daisy I've got issues with, by the way. The rest of them are all. I just fucking do not.
It's not all ducks. It's just that particular duck. He's not duckist.
Yeah, no, it's just fucking Daisy, tramp.
Sorry, my phone just turned Siri on again. I don't know what I said, but something obviously triggered Siri.
Siri is clearly very interested in duck penises, is what it is, and she knows where you're going with this. What the fuck?
Somebody fucking does.
What the fuck was I saying? I went on a rant about Pluto there. We were going somewhere. Sorry, I sidetracked us there.
Yeah, it makes a change with you. So we were talking about the pacing and so the way the way it feels like it does move on, like and basically the fact the studio, Disney had this, they put out this property and
yes, yeah, Mickey and Pluto and all of that, and yes,
yeah.
So yes, it's a surefire hit because you've got all these characters, but
yeah,
at the same time, like any other studio, and I'm not going to mention any names, I'm looking at you, DreamWorks. Any other studio would put out half hour of shit just because they can call it Shrek the fucking Halls or whatever you want to call it. But Disney don't do that. They don't do shit. We mentioned Once Upon a Christmas and Twice Upon a Christmas earlier. Yeah. Those could, again, just as easily be cheap tie-ins, that they can that they could have just dumped on TV. Like, I don't know when they were actually released. I assume they went straight to DVD, looking at the length of them.
I'm assuming so.
I first watched them way back on Disney Life, I think, when I was kicking around. In fact, I may even have seen one of them on Netflix before that. But
yeah, I think it was Disney Life I first saw them. We had that when before Disney Plus. We had that when Jess was little. And yeah, I'm fairly sure that's when I saw, certainly the first one. I think that's when I saw that.
They don't have to be good.
No.
But they are. And that's a thing with Christmas. Like there are these fucking Christmas movie channels now, and like how much shit gets dumped on Netflix every year at Christmas.
Yeah.
How many fucking Christmas castles and fucking Princess for Christmas movies and all that kind of shit are there? Like, put Christmas in the title.
Yeah.
Loads of people. Yeah, and loads of people are going to watch it. Hello, I'm one of them. I love Christmas.
Yeah, and I mean, so you know me and Christmas. It takes me a long time to get into Christmas. That we are now 10 days away, and no, it's starting to feel a bit like Christmas. Mainly because I watched Krampus 2 days ago. But these channels, they start. I think the one on Freeview started broadcasting around about mid-October, and they start off. They'll have a couple of films which they'll show on repeat 3 or 4 times a week. And then by the time you get to the end of November, they're literally running from 6 a.m. until 2 a.m.
Yeah. With
a different film every day. And you might have, over the course of 3 weeks, you might repeat a couple of films. But they are pretty much non-stop. Unless you're like me and you don't sleep. You could sit there and watch this shit all day. And it would be on when you wake up and it would be on when you go to bed. And chances are you're not going to see the same film twice in a week. But there's so much absolute horseshit. I mean, what was Tori watching last week? It was. They're all kind of variations on a theme. It's always somebody from a big city goes home to their small town to try and save a family business or to look after a relative, fall in love with their old high school whatever, and live happily ever after by not going back to their life in the city. Or there's some big evil corporation who want to take over mom and pop's little cookie shop, and they've got to save that and teach the CEO the meaning of Christmas. They're all variations on a theme. And even when you get into the higher end Christmas movies, they're all still kind of the same. And that's why when you look at things like It's a Wonderful Life, yes, okay, they've been ripped off a lot since, but they're not the same fucking story as everything else.
No.
So you look at things like that. I mean, I was looking at a list earlier of I think it was the 50 or 65 best Christmas films. And they had stuff. There's some stuff on there which most people argue aren't Christmas films. Not talking about Die Hard because it's a fucking Christmas film.
Look, I was literally going to wait for you to finish and ask, is it on there? Because
it's on there.
Right.
It was like number 12 or something like that. It was quite high up as well.
This podcast fully endorses Die Hard as a Christmas film.
Also on there, which one I hadn't thought about until recently, but I was glad it was on there. Batman Returns.
Yeah, Christmas film. It's on my to-watch list for this year. It's been about 2 years. It's on my to-watch list.
So I was going through that, and there was loads of stuff on there. And you look at those, and there aren't the myriad of repeats on there. It's like that's a remake of It's a Wonderful Life. That's a remake of Christmas Carol. That's a remake of. They haven't done that there. They've gone right. These are films that stand on their own, and they're quality Christmas films. Whether it's because they're set at Christmas and they have certain themes, or whether it's because they're the cheesy fucking cookie cutter Christmas things we get every year. That's not quite that's what they're looking at. But you look at this channel, I think there's at least one channel on Freeview which is full of Christmas movies, and you could transplant name, actor, and location 3 times a day, and it's the same fucking movie.
Yep, but people watch them.
People love it.
They don't have to be good.
Yeah, they have to make you feel all warm and Christmassy.
Yeah, and Christmas Carol, ironically, doesn't do that. For me anyway. Even when we get to the end of Muppets or whichever one I'm watching, like I don't come away from there with the warm fuzzies. You know, I come away from there thinking like, well, yeah, okay, that was a nice story, but like, I'll watch A Wonderful Life and I'll come away from there feeling like $1 million, like I'm on top of the fucking world watching It's Wonderful Life. Takes me right through the gamut to get there, mind you. I cannot watch it without bawling my fucking eyes out.
It's a fucking ringer of a movie.
Yeah. But you're on top of the world when that finishes. You feel fucking amazing about life. Yeah. You don't ever get that with Christmas Carol, or I certainly don't. No. Anyway, no. It kind of, as we mentioned earlier, it's quite bleak, and it takes you down that path, and then argues you back around to like, yeah, I guess it could be okay.
Yeah, it could be worse.
Yeah, that's kind of where it argues you around, isn't it? Like, Scrooge has by no means solved every problem in the world.
No, this is it. And I mean, the thing with Christmas Carol is you never, because there's no massive social shift in it. There's no real progress apart from him as an individual. Even though he's rich, he's not changing things. So you still have abject poverty.
Yeah. You
still have a class structure which says that you've got people who have thousands of pounds in a time where that's lifetimes worth of fortune, and people who can't afford more than 1p on a plate. Yeah. It didn't solve any of that. It didn't change any of that. It just changed one person's outlook on it. And I think that's why it's so effective. And even in the Disney version, that's why it's so effective, because actually it says, look, it's not all fucking sunshine and roses at the end. Things are still shit. Tiny Tim is probably still going to die.
But they're less shit.
They're less shit because all of a sudden the person who was directly involved in making them shit is now no longer a cunt.
Yeah, basically. And again, one of the best communications of that visually is, again, down to the Muppets. I think, when you get the final, like Michael Caine singing aside, when you get the final scene in Muppets Christmas Carol, and it's not just, I'm going straight to Tiny Tim's with a giant turkey. It's like, here's some cheese for the mice. Here's a donation for the poor, and actually here's a scarf to go with it, and here's a bottle of wine for you, and here's some new mittens for you, and here's like presents for everybody, because I'm going to make everyone else's life a little bit less shit in this horrible fucking bleak world that we live in.
And I think it's not a permanent solution. You can't do that indefinitely.
No.
But it's on this one day where everyone's supposed to be fucking nice to each other. I'm going to do something nice. I'm going to go out of my way to give people a Christmas that they may or may not deserve, but actually, it'll make them feel better, and by extension, will make me feel better. Now,
you're right. There's the key. That's what I was just about to hit on, and that's why you don't get the warm fuzzies from A Christmas Carol, is because actually all of this is self-motivated. So Scrooge learns nothing.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the thing.
Scrooge learns that if he's a nicer person, he's not going to die alone.
It is all self-motivated.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you've seen it. They did a Blackadder Christmas Carol in I think it was late 80s, early 90s. And it's set in the Blackadder 3 period. And he is the most insufferably nice person in the world. And people come into the shop, and he's not lending the money, he's giving the money. His nephew comes in and talking about Christmas, and he has this really annoying girlfriend. They've got these stupid fucking cackle laughs, a bit like Vince Vaughn in Psycho, that really annoying fucking laugh. And he puts up with it all. And the visions he gets of past, present, and future are actually, if you become less nice, if you become more of a bastard, your life will turn out like this. And the idea is to sort of keep it scared into staying on that path, being righteous, being noble, being kind, all the rest of it. But his realization at the end is, so if I'm a complete bastard, I'll be the fucking supreme ruler of the galaxy at some point in the future. Yeah, but that's not the lesson you're supposed to be taking from this. Well, fuck that. And he kicks the ghost out.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting take. And it's the sort of thing you'd expect from Richard Curtis and Ben Elton, that they've just taken it and dumped it on its head. And it's a really interesting take. But even that is a character that's entirely self-serving by the end. He goes, okay, if I change my ways and do this instead of what I've been doing, I will get this out of it. I will advance. I will achieve. I will improve.
Yes.
And that's always been my reading of A Christmas Carol. It's that I say the whole thing is that I'm going to make everyone else feel better, and thus I will feel better. I will improve what people think of me. Not I will improve as a person. People will see me better.
It's the ultimate self-care film, isn't it? It's the ultimate, like, I'm going to feel better by making others around me feel better. Like, I'm not necessarily learning anything. I'm just kind of making myself feel better. I'm plastering over the cracks.
It's the America of problems. I'll throw money at it until it goes away.
I'm going to plaster over the cracks, basically, is what it is. And you touched on something, actually, that I meant to talk about right back at the start, but then we got sidetracked comparing this to the Muppets. But actually, again, one of the things about this, we talked about what's faithful and what's not. And actually, Christmas Carol as a tale has been adapted into so many other things as well that are not called A Christmas Carol, but we just take this storyline and we copy paste it into. I've even got a Batman adaptation of A Christmas Carol that I read every year. It's not called A Christmas Carol.
I'm sure there's a Family Guy one. There'll be a Simpsons one.
Yep.
There'll be all sorts of comics and books and all that, and like even things like the Beano will have fucking done it at some point.
Exactly.
It'll be okay. Well, no. Dennis repents because he's been overly picked on, and that Santa's not going to come.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of feels like it is almost now the archetypal redemption story.
Yes,
it's almost like everything is based on, when we get these redemption stories, they still go through the same cycle that Scrooge goes through of you learn from your mistakes of the past so you can avoid making them again in the future. And so it gets adapted constantly. And so there are more examples of this being done badly than there are well. And I think it speaks great credit to the fact that, when it is done well, we're still talking about it some 40 years later.
Yeah.
And it also speaks credit to the fact that amongst the good adaptations of this, of which off the top of my head, I can probably pick 4. One of those is the Batman adaptation, incidentally. So I'm not just talking about film and stuff here either. I would still rate this number 2. And it's because, even though it, and I mean that as a compliment rather than it's not as good as the Muppets, okay? Because as much as it condenses the whole story, and I think we do lose a little bit of the core.
Yeah.
Actually, most of it still comes through. And as a story from A to B, as a narrative, it works incredibly well. And everything else that's stressed up around it, we've already mentioned the voice talent is superb. The animation is top notch.
Yeah.
Everything about it is a quality product, and that shines through. And the most important thing for me in anything, as any regular listeners know, is always the storytelling.
Yeah.
And this absolutely nails it. There's no question about that. It absolutely nails it. And as we said earlier, again, using number 1 as an example, I guess maybe you can argue it actually nails it better than a Muppet Christmas Carol. Whilst that may be, in my opinion, the better adaptation, perhaps this actually does a better job in adapting the story and cutting those swats out of the middle.
I think that's possibly a better version, but this is a better adaptation. I think that this is, as I said earlier, I think they're so different in their approach that the Muppets is far more faithful, and you are getting Dickens' Christmas Carol, but with Muppets.
Yeah.
Whereas here you are getting Disney's retelling of it.
Yeah, you're getting Mickey's Christmas Carol.
So I mean, I think that, and I think in that respect, it's very difficult to compare them because they are so different, even though they are telling the same story.
Also, I just want to point out why. I know it's because he's the fucking poster child. Why is it Mickey's Christmas Carol?
No idea. It shouldn't be.
Because he's barely in it anyway.
Well, this is the conversation we had about fucking Mandalorian the other day, wasn't it? Fucking, is it? I can't remember the fucking. Is it Shang-Chi, isn't it?
Yeah, Shang-Chi. Yeah,
Shang-Chi. Yeah, he's not the fucking star of his own show.
It's not about Shang-Chi.
And that's the same here. It's not Mickey's Christmas Carol. It's Scrooge's Christmas Carol.
But yes, Mickey Mouse is at this point the most recognizable character on the planet in the 80s.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, I know that, but you could have just called it Disney's Christmas Carol, and you'd have had the same effect.
Well, yeah, that's it. I don't think it would have. I don't think that would have impacted on sales.
No, absolutely not.
Because people still know what they're getting. They still know it's Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Donald Duck and Scrooge.
Still put Mickey on the fucking cover, but call it Mickey's Christmas Carol.
It's a little bit disingenuous, that one.
Is absolutely wrong, isn't it? Because it's not Mickey's Christmas Carol at all.
Yeah.
If
that's the biggest thing we can level at it, I think it's okay.
It's Uncle Scrooge's Christmas Carol, not Mickey's Christmas Carol. But yeah, you're right. If that's the biggest, and actually there are no real, if I'm honest, there are no real criticisms I can level of it. You know, and that's not something we look to do on this show anyway. This isn't better than Mario. This is all just about our honest opinion of rewatching these things that we used to love as kids and what they mean to us now. Sometimes they're shit and we'll call them out on it, but I don't have anything bad to say about this. There's no need to say anything bad about this because it's everything you want it to be. It's an adaptation of Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
It's a Disney product, which means it's the highest quality possible in every single way.
Yeah.
It's entertaining. It's family friendly. It's just lovely. But I'm not going to watch it every year because there's only so many. Like every year, I read Batman Noel. Every year I watch Muppets Christmas Carol, and every other I might read the text. So I'm not going to watch this as well all the time. Like there's got to be some breathing room somewhere.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I watch this every year more or less. I don't watch Muppets every year, and I read the book probably every 3 or 4 years. I did read it last year because it tied into what I was writing, so again I needed to. But yeah, it's one of those you wouldn't pick it up every year and go, oh, and I know it's December the 1st. I'm going to pick up a Christmas Carol. Yeah. No, it's not that sort of book. So yeah, I mean, this one for me, this is my go-to. It tells the story I need to tell. It's short. I am going to commit a lot of time to it. I know it that well. I can put it on and be doing other things at the same time. No, I mean, like this year, for example, I was decorating a tree while it was on, which spilled over into other things. But I didn't know. A lot of times we do these shows and I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and actually watch it because I don't remember enough, or I'm not familiar. This one I can do inside out, back to front, upside down. It doesn't stop me. I could be doing anything else at the same time. But yeah, I mean, going forward, I would imagine next year I'll be exactly the same boat. I'm saying, right, okay, there will probably be an anniversary special of it. I will probably buy it and be watching that. But it'll be, even if there's not, I'll be watching Mickey's Christmas Carol.
Yeah, which is fair. And you know, I'm sure there are people listening out there that do watch it every year. And yeah, more power to you. As I say, I just don't, purely because there's always a bunch of shit to watch at Christmas. But every time I do watch it, I enjoy it. I enjoyed it this time. I'll enjoy it next time I watch it. And there will always be a little part of my childhood that just has this associated. Just because, as I say, you couldn't move at Christmas when I was very, very young without seeing Mickey's Christmas Carol. It was on tree decorations. It was on ITV every year. It was on crackers. I remember the plastic tablecloths would have Mickey's Christmas Carol characters on it. It was every fucking way. It genuinely was a part of Christmas. For me as a kid, and so there's that associated with it as well, which is always lovely when you go back and watch something like that, especially around Christmas.
I mean, the flip side of it is that we also used to watch He-Man and She-Ra Christmas special every year. Having now gone back and done that. No fucking thank you.
It's got its place. Yeah, it's not.
It does have its place, but I mean, again, if I'm picking one of the two, it ain't that.
Yeah, no, it's shit, but it's wonderfully shit. It's wonderfully shit. And in fact, now we're talking about it, it's been about 3 years. I may have to give it a spin this year. Particularly with all the He-Man love we've had this year, I may have to give it a bit of a spin. Just because, you know, Skeletor's never not funny in that. So
This is true.
Yeah, maybe worth a go. But yeah, in terms of Muppets Christmas Carol, Mickey's Christmas Carol, Jesus Christ, just rolls straight off the tongue. In terms of Mickey's Christmas Carol, thoroughly enjoyed it. Gave me everything I wanted out of a Christmas special. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I will watch it again, I've no doubt. Maybe, you know, I think we've had such a strong run of our Christmas specials because last year, well, saying that, we had the Snowman last year, which was shit. So actually, yeah, that's rubbish. We haven't had a strong run. I was just, I've erased the fact that we had to watch the Snowman from my mind because I fucking hate it so much. Because prior to that, we had Charlie Brown Christmas and The Grinch and all of these things that are regulars for me. And you know, I'll still argue that Charlie Brown Christmas stands head and shoulders above pretty much anything. The Grinch just has a special place for me, but Charlie Brown Christmas is clearly the best of all of them. Just The Grinch is special, and this kind of, I guess, in all of the Christmas stuff we watch, then sits underneath those. You know, it is very, very good. It is very good. I cannot fault it in any way, and it, you know, it's the right time of year to watch it. So 'tis the season, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I think it's to get drunk, doesn't it? That just means you can drink in the morning.
Don't know.
Ask my sister-in-law; she knows.
Yeah. Who knows?
I'm kind of the same. There's not really much else to say about it. I think this is something that I've watched consistently since I was about 3, which is far longer ago than I'd like to admit. And yeah, it's something I'll carry on watching. The fact I got to introduce it to the kids last year, and they watched it with me then, they've watched it with me again this year, and it actually helped them this year, but going to see the performance they saw on Monday. When they came back, not so much number 1, because he's got the attention span of a gopher. Number 2, sorry. But number 1, she was like, oh, well, that instead of that character, they had this. And instead of that one doing this one did it instead. So she obviously took it in a lot more and took it in the story more this year than she did last year, but she was able to equate it. And I think that if I can offer my kids nothing else, a way of appreciating Disney, but art in general, and be able to take it in a modern context and be able to apply it, I think that's something that they need to stay forward. That's something that not a lot of kids do, because it's not fucking Minecraft or Roblox or other things like that, which I don't understand because I'm old. But it's something I was really pleased to be able to have that conversation with her, where she was explaining to me that instead of the ghosts being people or figures you recognize, one was a bauble, one was a Christmas tree, and one was something else. But she was still able to understand where they fit in. So that was all really positive. I know that kind of gives me hope that the next generation aren't completely fucking doomed, because at least they can apply context to stuff.
Yeah, and there's something lovely there as well about you've been able to introduce it to, like you said, something like Disney, which is quality storytelling, and hopefully maybe that's something she'll carry through rather than looking at Roblox or Minecraft or whatever. Which there's nothing wrong with that. Look, if however kids express their creativity, if that's building giant fucking robot worlds,
and I'm fine with that. It's where you sat on YouTube watching other cunts do it. That's just fucking stupid.
Yep. Okay.
Why play a dog and bark yourself?
I watch a lot of YouTube, but not Minecraft videos.
But that's the thing. That's kind of the thing. And I've seen a lot of that with number 2, but also with other kids, that they would rather watch somebody else do it than try and do it themselves.
Yeah, that I don't understand. I don't understand the whole Twitch thing.
I don't understand how buy a game and then not play it because I want to watch somebody else do it instead.
No, I don't understand streaming games. But at the risk of sounding like an old man. But yeah, I think there's something lovely to be taken out of that as well. Not just that you've got to introduce the kids to Disney, but also to kind of pass on this tradition that you had as a kid, and maybe pass that down now. And who knows, maybe in 40 years' time, number 1's going to be sat in front of a fucking microphone or on a fucking holodeck or whatever it is now, talking about how she's watching this fucking 80-year-old special.
Yeah.
That she used to watch with her dad. So there's something inherently magic about being able to do that. And you can't do it with everything. You can only do it with something that's going to stand the test of time. And that requires a level of quality, and it requires a level of emotional attachment that you simply don't get with a lesser product than this. So I don't think you could pay any higher compliment than that, really.
No, I think you're right. I may be wrong, in which case, listeners, please let me know. I always love being told I'm wrong. I get a lot of practice at it, so it's fine.
I always love being told about the facts of duck penises. So if you do have anything further to offer me about duck anatomy, then please do write in and let me know.
Yeah, maybe I'll skip those ones. I'll just forward them straight to you.
You can also tell me I'm wrong. It's fine. We can argue. It's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to know. I mean, especially given the age of this and given the fact this has been around, and it's not as if there's some Disney stuff. It came out and then it disappeared for fucking years. You didn't see it until Disney Plus came along. This has been around.
Some of it you don't even see on fucking Disney Plus.
Well, yeah, there's that as well.
Looking at Black Cauldron, where are you?
Yeah, I wasn't going to say, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to know what people's recollections of this are, what people's thoughts of this are, especially comparing it to things like Muppets, whereby you have a very similar product that's fundamentally different. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, by all means, let us know. Get in touch on Twitter at SMPDpod. You can go to the website, ddpodcast.net, where you can also get our previous episodes and other shows. On Facebook and YouTube with the Double M Podcast Network, so like and subscribe and all that junk on there. Wherever you get your podcasts from, subscribe, leave us a message, and we'll get back to you as best we can. But until next time.
Have a safe, enjoyable, and Merry Christmas, listeners. We'll see you in the new year. God bless us, everyone.